So much happening around the world, from the Pope's visit to Iraq to sexual harassment allegations of New York's governor. Here to talk about it all is Foreign Affairs correspondent Lisa Daftari. She joins me now from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome. Good to have
Thank
you
you.
on again.
Thank you.
Okay, so Lisa, during the Pope's visit to Iraq, he went to Mosul. In that city, Muslims and Christians witnessed the worst of ISIS's rule as they carried out many atrocities, which included beheadings and mass killings. So Pope Francis called on Christians to forgive and to rebuild. Maybe tell us more about this.
Yeah, what an interesting juxtaposition, right? You have a city where that has faced so much darkness. As you said, ISIS went on the rampage. There's so many who were brutally murdered, beheaded, raped, pillaged. I mean, families torn apart. It has not been a place where we've heard good news from in a long, long time. And now to have the Pope, someone who represents, freedom of religion, the really coming together in Christianity, but also in just its monotheism. He represents so much to so many people. And for him to stand there and call on the world to come together peacefully, to forgive and forget, to rebuild. And remember, this is the first time a pope has visited the Middle East. The first time pope has made this kind of a trip to a war-torn area like this, and his message will truly resonate. We're also looking at a time where the Iranian regime continues to march on, create very, very terror-filled, war-ridden scenarios in Yemen, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria. The list goes on and on. So for the Pope to really, he's standing in confrontation to this type of behavior and saying, let's turn the page and let's have a different future for the Middle East.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Now, about 10,000 people attended Sunday Mass, which the Pope himself performed. And Lisa, this is significant as this is an area still trying to heal from that reign of terror of ISIS, just as you were saying. This was kind of a brave move for him to do.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to remember one other thing. The Christians used to live pretty peacefully in the Middle East, each country having at least a 10% population of Christians. There were churches and there was Mass and there was Christmas. And now we have a Middle East that is almost rid of its Christians because of the high level of persecution, because of the threats that they faced when they were just trying to practice. Whether it was Mass, they had to go underground, or they wanted to celebrate Christmas, they had to be in hiding. This is obviously because of the heavy influence of Islamist groups that would not allow them to practice freely. So now for the Pope to hold Mass there for 10,000 people to gather in this day and age, it's truly remarkable.
Absolutely. Now, Lisa, closer to home, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has refused to resign despite new allegations of sexual harassment. So, what's the latest in this?
You know what, we had our eyes on the governor for this cover up of the nursing homes and his involvement in hiding a lot of important information about how he led the older elderly to go back to these old age homes where they then died from COVID because it was spreading. And then the cover up, and someone from his office obviously leaked that to the news. Now, put that aside for a minute, because there was this expose, because there was almost this transparency regarding the governor, all of a sudden we see more people be feeling brave enough to come forward and say, wait a minute, there's more to the story. He's also done X, Y, and Z. And day after day, we're seeing more and more victims. And we're also seeing a more brazen governor saying, I'm not resigning. Now, my question is this: are we focusing, on these women, as we should be, but also forgetting about the other fraud, about the cover-ups during COVID? I mean, meanwhile, this guy was going out and doing press briefings every day. He got an
Yeah,
Emmy
I
Award for
know. I was
that.
just going to say the Emmy Award winning governor, right?
He wrote a book.
Unbelievable. Yes.
I mean, while he's hiding all this information, he's off getting all these accolades. So, we need to back up and really put this guy under a probe, which there will be, and to, maybe force a resignation if he's not going to move aside. This is awful behavior for anyone, let alone someone who's in the who's in the position of power and responsibility, like the governor of New York.
Now, Lisa, after the success of passing the COVID-19 relief package, President Biden is opposed to ending a filibuster and wants to attempt a coalition to work with Republicans and independents in order to get things done. So, is this even possible? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's definitely something that both sides have alluded to, obviously, wanting the unity, wanting to work together. And we have had lawmakers on both sides really stand up and say, we want to do this. But unfortunately, we're in a place that the country is so incredibly divided. And leading up to the election, even after the post election time period, um, the, they're just too far apart to bridge any gap. And of course, there are moderates on both sides, and they feel as though the rift is much smaller, shorter than others. But there are extremists on both sides as well. And because of that extreme ideology, it seems that the two sides are very far apart, and coming together in unity for any reason is going to be much more difficult than just some great talking points. This is a very difficult time for our country. We're facing obviously the COVID pandemic and economic recovery, so much more in addition to threats from the outside, whether it be China or cyber hacking or the Iranian regime, and the list goes on. So it definitely is a time where unity is necessary. It would definitely give us some leverage over some very important issues if we could unite. But I think it's going to be a very, very long time before we see actual unity.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned threats from outside. So, speaking of the president, Biden extended the country's state of emergency against Iran by another year. Can you tell us more about that?
This is a very interesting situation. The Biden administration, on the one hand, is inviting Iran to sit down to talks, is talking about how they're going to make it easy on them. The Europeans have put less pressure on the Iranian regime to make it easier on them, to bring them to the negotiating table. The Biden administration has taken the Houthis off the designated terror list. So we've made it quite easy for the Iranian regime to come back to the negotiating table. At the same time, we saw the targeted missile attack in Syria on Iranian assets, and now we're extending the emergency powers against Iran for another year. So they're making it a little bit confusing for us. Are we trying to make it easier for them, or are we not trying to make it easier for them? Well, I think the answer lies within the reality of the situation, which is to say the Iranian regime continues to march on towards a nuclear weapon. It continues to march on with its terror activities in the region. It continues to flex its muscles about its nuclear program. This month alone, they have threatened to take uranium enrichment up to 60%. They have said no to any IAEA surprise inspections, meaning they want to be the ones to call the shots. So it doesn't really look good. It's very difficult to say we want to have another deal a la 2015 with a regime that's non-compliant, that is flexing its muscles and acting like a regional bully. So it just doesn't look good in their favor.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of bullying, so China is calling on the U.S. to drop the Trump era sanctions, and they're warning against bullying. So, how does one bully China? Is it even possible?
It's an opposite day. It's
Yeah.
interesting because, with China, they were non-transparent about anything doing with COVID. The WHO went into the country and came out with no answers because they weren't being compliant. They have ripped us off continuously with regards to anything having to do with intellectual property. They're just all over the map. They haven't played fairly from day one, and that's what President Trump campaigned on, let alone during his presidency, obviously was trying to target the Chinese government and say, look, either play fair or you're not going to play at all. And now with President Biden in the White House, everyone thinks, well, there's a new sheriff in town and he's going to be really easy peasy on us. So starting with China, he's calling for the sanctions to be removed, to stop quote unquote bullying in the Trump era policies. the Iran regime is doing the same. They're just thinking that the Biden administration is not going to be as harsh on them or as reactive towards the realities that we're seeing. It's when we don't have an America first kind of president right now, but at the same time, the reality on the ground speaks to a threat. China is a big threat to the United States. Iran's regime is a big threat to the United States, and hopefully the Biden administration will act accordingly, and they will put partisan politics aside and say, this is what needs to be done in order to protect the United States and our assets.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, changing gears just a little bit here. So, pretty much all of America, all of Canada, North America, we tuned in to a big interview last night. Oprah Winfrey had her much anticipated interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to talk about their life before and after stepping down from senior royal duties. So, what has been the reaction in the US, if anything at all?
Yeah, a lot of people watched it. I think people hate watched it, meaning they just needed to know what happened so that they could tweet about it or post about it, or they can just keep up with all the memes that we're seeing today in reaction to this interview. Look, one of the ones I loved that I saw was, here they are doing their millionth interview saying that they want to be out of the public eye. So true. I didn't watch it. I just felt it was, not necessary to watch gossip. For her to have this opportunity to marry into the royal family, for her to now then become much more famous, to get this type of interview with Oprah, whereas she would never have been even recognized by Oprah in the past, and then to say that, she is going to, she basically trampled the royal family publicly. Just keep your dirty laundry to yourself, is what I thought.
Yeah, does it even serve a purpose, really, when you think about it? Whose, yeah, whose agenda is it going to advance? So speaking of royalty, Lisa, you were mentioning that you had the opportunity to speak with a real princess yourself today. Let's hear about that.
Yes, another reason why I didn't watch is because I was preparing for a very big interview I had this morning for the Los Angeles World Affairs Council. They hosted Princess Yasmine Pahlavi. She is the wife of Reza Pahlavi, who is the prince of Iran. He's the son of the Shah of Iran, who was toppled in 1979 in the Islamic Revolution in Iran. He is the last king or monarch that the Iranian people knew, and his wife is doing wonderful things. She's using this platform, although she never served in power as a princess. She married a prince, and they've lived in the Washington, D.C. area since they got married. So it's been a while, but she's using her platform to raise awareness about refugees, about mental illness, about all kinds of wonderful causes. And I was able to sit down with her today virtually. We had over 1,000 people watch. So that was, in the day and age of COVID, these are the silver linings where we have now this ability to gather, not in just a physical space, but to do it virtually and get a lot more people to watch. And it felt like a tight, cozy interview, just like I would be sitting next to her at a coffee table and doing the interview.
Absolutely. I was going to say she sounds like she's doing amazing things. Absolutely. Now, you'd mentioned the pandemic and having to go over, Zoom and Skype these days instead of being in person. So let's look at what Sweden has done. So in the beginning of the pandemic, Sweden chose to keep its society mostly open, only implementing a few restrictions. But in the past few months, the government has taken a much stronger stance. So what changed that government's mind?
With regards to Sweden's going through a lot of different changes right now, and it's interesting to see how its society reacts to each thing. First of all, they have a very interesting, I would say obedient. I don't want to use the word obedient, but they definitely have a more unified population where they have gone along with whatever the government has wanted. They said, they're going to leave everything open, and they were able to overcome COVID. They didn't have a surge. They were able to keep their numbers low and to continue that way. Now they have announced a ban against and any headscarves or face coverings to prevent burqas and to really what they want to create is a homogenous society. Obviously, this is there has been a lot of outcry by the Muslim community because they said, first we went along with that. That was COVID. Fine, that's over. We're not wearing any masks, but we're wearing our headscarves, which is a religious duty. Look, they have taken the opposite approach from the rest of Europe. You can take, for example, France. France was extremely welcoming to its more religious Muslim populations. They even had areas where they lived on their own, obviously wore burqas. It became that, even parts of Sharia law were brought into society. And then they talked about the Prophet Muhammad as a cartoon and why there was a backlash. And even mentioning that this existed resulted in that teacher getting beheaded and resulting in a ban across the Muslim world and protests in France and across the Muslim world against Macron, against what France had done. And France is in a bit of a situation where they didn't push for more assimilation. They were extremely um, lax about these laws, and it turned out that they came to realize that they made a mistake in to some extent, to allow freedom of religion, but not to allow it to interfere with the rest of society, to allow it to interfere with assimilation for the rest of society in schools and universities and such. So Sweden is taking a much more extreme approach, and we'll see how that pans out in coming days. This was just announced.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Lisa, for your thoughts on all of these important issues happening around the globe. It looks like we are out of time, but we're always so grateful to have you on our show.
My pleasure. Thank you.